So, spiritual warfare, hugely important matter. And again, a lot of times, unfortunately, the way that this gets discussed as a topic, people will look at it in the sense of spiritual warfare is something that you just don't understand, but I can help you to understand it. And I've done, a 5-part series, and I'll send you the MP3s on it, or the videos, or whatever the case may be, for, some amount, or buy my book and it'll tell you how to fight spiritual warfare and all that kind of stuff. So it's a real cottage industry. And, again, things that you'll hear entire sessions at conferences. Sometimes the entire conference is about spiritual warfare, which is a real thing. There's no question about it. But the idea that it's only really understood and what we're supposed to do about it by somebody who's really looked into it, as though there's some kind of secret way that we understand this. So spiritual conflict, or that there is, quote, spiritual battle, shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. So let's face it, as far as the spiritual matters, when it comes to the idea of that there is a God and that there is a devil, anybody who is joined to the God of the Bible as his child is immediately, just from the word go, an enemy of the devil. And to think that somehow he doesn't take that personal and that he's not going to look to try to mess with your life, goodness, I mean, let's just have a little perspective here. The idea that there is a war for this world and everything that goes on in it, and what the devil wants more than anything else is to take as many people into the lake of fire with him as he can. So again, he's defeated, he knows it. But the idea that he can at least take some with him in a twisted way, again, I don't understand the mentality of it. Again, you're asking me to try to get into the mind of an angel? I can't. So why he persists in doing the things, that's not even something that any of us can understand, other than it's just blind hatred and just his way of getting back at God, trying to take that which God died for, humanity, and ruin their lives and take them to an eternity separated from God. That's his motivation. So that's the case. The world's going to go that way. What about the believer? Well, to some extent, we're completely off limits. Now, as far as the spiritual things, he can't come in and kick the Holy Spirit out of the believer. The believer can't be possessed. The believer, we're off the table as far as anything he can do on the spiritual level. Can he make our lives miserable? Sure he can. Can he stir up all kinds of things? Absolutely. There's no question about it. So that's where spiritual warfare comes in. It never becomes a matter of salvation. It becomes a matter of just day-to-day of life kind of things. So the idea that there is a battle that rages, I don't think that we should ever think anything otherwise. Let's look at a couple of the verses that talk about this. Let's look at 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Just as a few examples, and then we'll just get to kind of the therefore part of it when we're done with it. So, 2 Corinthians chapter 10. I was looking through 1 Corinthians. Sorry about that. So 2 Corinthians 10, we start at verse, may as well just start at verse 1. Now I, Paul, myself, am pleading with you by the meekness and gentleness of Christ, who in presence am lowly among you, but being absent am bold towards you. But I beg you that when I am present, that I may not be bold with you, with that confidence by which I intend to be bold against some who think of us as though we walked according to the flesh. So again, he's not there with them, but the point is that there are people who are saying and doing a lot of things that are really trying to undermine his work. And his point is, when I'm there, I want to come to you people as not an adversary, though there are some who want to be my adversary. He says this, for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. So right there, it tells you he must be speaking about some kind of a war that is not of just flesh and blood, but there's something that's behind the scenes. Well, he says this, for the weapons of our warfare, they're not carnal. They're not earthly things. It's not swords. It's not shields. It's none of those kind of things. Rather, they are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, in the casting down of arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ. So the point is, we're not going to fight a spiritual battle with just swords and with arrows and with spears and shields. Everything that we're going to do is in the spiritual sense. We're going to find out what the enemy tries to do. We're going to cast down the things that he does, trying to undermine our work, undermining the things. In Paul's case, it's the people that are trying to war against his message to them and the work that he does, but it's to the church as a whole. Everything that we try to do is going to have its detractors and people who are going to try to undo the work that we do. So we fight this war on a spiritual level through spiritual means. So it's very similar to that. 2 Timothy, let's go there. I'm sorry, 1 Timothy chapter 1. Just going to give you a few options here. You know what? Since I'm already there. 1 Timothy chapter 1. And we get this, and just a few of these, they should be self-explanatory. In verse 18, it says, "Now this charge I commit to you, son Timothy, to you, my son Timothy, according to the prophecies previously made concerning you, that by them you may wage a good warfare, having faith and a good conscience, which some having rejected concerning the faith have suffered shipwreck." Now, so his point is, look at the last part of verse 18, this idea of waging a good warfare. Now, he was not a soldier in the earthly sense. So Paul clearly is talking about things of a spiritual nature, and then he talks about people who did some awful things, even to the point of abandoning the faith. And he mentions them by name in verse 20, Hymenaeus and Alexander. So, yeah, there's times that Paul would even name names of those people who have done damaging things. But here, Timothy, you're in the middle of a warfare, and Timothy is being left as the pastor there at Ephesus to oversee the well-being of the church. Yeah, you're going to be in for some spiritual warfare, as they like to call it. So 2 Timothy chapter 2, next book over. And he says in verse 3, "You therefore, Timothy, you must endure hardship as a good soldier of Jesus Christ." Now, did Jesus call his church to war? Of course not. Not in the physical sense, not in the earthly sense. Remember when he was arrested, and remember the things that he had said to Peter, "I could call a legion of angels, put your sword away." When he comes to Pilate, and Pilate says, "Are you a king?" "I am a king, but it's not of this world. If it was, my people would fight, but I'm not of this world." Same kind of thing. So he says in verse 4, "No one entangled in warfare entangles himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who enlisted him as a soldier. And also, if anyone competes in athletics, he is not crowned unless he competes according to the rules." So he says all of these things. He gives a couple of examples of just real earthly kinds of things, of competing in athletics or warfare or whatnot like that, but he's making a spiritual application. Remember that Jesus, verse 8, on this Jesus Christ, the seed of David, was raised from the dead according to the gospel, for which I suffered trouble as an evildoer, even to the point of chains, but the word of God is not chained. Therefore I endure all things for the sake of the elect, that they also may obtain salvation, which is in Jesus Christ, with eternal glory. So there's a warfare that goes on here, but I am in this place because God has put me here, and I will wage this war accordingly. It's a spiritual matter. It's not an earthly one. Again, Paul's not going around telling everybody to equip themselves with swords and spears, arrows and shields. This is spiritual. We do battle in the spiritual sense. One last one that's very common, we all know this one, and we won't go through the whole thing, but in chapter 6 of the book of Ephesians, again, we all know the passage. We've heard it quoted so many times, and again, sometimes it's dealt with and it's taught very, very well. Other times it's not taught so well. Chapter 6, verse 10 says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might." Now, this could sound, if that's all that's there, the power of his might sounds like a military kind of a thing. Well, "Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil." Well, that's where you start to realize this is not an earthly thing, because we're not going to fight the devil with swords and spears and arrows and shields, like I keep saying. This is much different. So he says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, and against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places." Spiritual warfare. Okay. Ground rules are not difficult for us to understand. Let's just get some very obvious things out of the way. The devil hates you in ways I don't think you really fully understand. He takes a very perverse pleasure in making our lives miserable. It's what he does. So the idea that we would fall into, quote, spiritual warfare, my job, my kids, my wife, my husband, my this, whatever you may have, your friends, your people that your co-workers, I don't know, it could be anybody, even anonymous people on Facebook, just whatever the case may be. It's just made your life miserable, and you're feeling it that it's more than just the normal day-to-day of stuff. There's spiritual things. It's got me, it's got my mind spinning all the time. I'm always frustrated, and it seems like I'm being drawn into all kinds of just goofy things all the time. Spiritual warfare, people would call that. But it's an interesting thing, and there's people that I've met in my life that it seems like all the time they're coming to me and talking about, man, I'm really going through some spiritual warfare. Interestingly enough, some of these people are people who do some of the most difficult things I think that there is to do in Christianity, and that is to be street witnessing and people that are always doing kind of the heavy lifting, if you will, in the church. They do the difficult things, and they're saying spiritual warfare. It's like, okay, well, look at what you do for the sake of the ministry. If you don't think for some reason you're going to draw more fire than the person who's not really doing anything at all for the kingdom, I just don't think you really are paying attention to what you've asked for. So let's just be honest. The warfare in the spiritual sense is raging 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It never stops. It is a constant war. It's all the time, everywhere. There's never a place where there's a ceasing of it. If somehow the devil has opened a front closer to you and you're noticing it, great. You're probably over the target at that point. So expect it. Don't be blown away by it. Don't be surprised. The devil is not going to go easy on you because you're crying about spiritual warfare and the difficulties. It's part of the job, if you will. It comes with the territory of being his kid. Now, if you're just going to go ahead and kind of sink back into the ranks and not make waves, your quote spiritual warfare will probably be a bit less. But the more that you engage, if you will, in the things, the more you're going to probably draw fire. It just, again, it comes with the territory. Don't be surprised by it. Man, things are really, really intense lately. There's lots of spiritual warfare. Well, yeah, it's what you signed up for. And so it's only for a time, and that's meaning that you should really kind of make sure that you don't get out in front of the Lord who fights for us anyway. So that idea that there is a lot of spiritual warfare, welcome to the battle. It's supposed to be a part of that, and don't shy away from it. What you want to do is say, Lord, I'm engaged in this because you've called me to be engaged in this. But I need to look at you as the commander, if you will, if we're using all the analogies of warfare. Who's the one who leads the armies? Who's the one who knows what's taking place? Who's the one who should give me my orders of what I'm supposed to do in it? And when it gets really hot and heavy and I'm taking a lot of, quote, attack, don't be surprised by that. What are we supposed to do? Don't lean on your own understanding. That's where you come before him and pray for those things. Lord, it's intense in this area, that area. Here's what's going on. Lord, you already know this, but it's just coming at me so fast and furious, and I don't know where it's coming from and from what direction at what time. I need you to help me to understand what I'm supposed to do. If I'm standing in the wrong place, if I don't have the right equipment, help me to know what I'm supposed to do. That's where spiritual warfare is ultimately won and lost, is whether or not we're going out ahead of him or we're just following orders as we're supposed to do. Those are pretty easy for us to understand. The Word is going to cover so many of those kinds of questions. The rest of it, you can just say, Lord, I'm going to trust you by the Holy Spirit to give me wisdom on what I should do at any particular time. But again, don't be surprised by spiritual warfare. Again, you would expect it. I would hope that you expect it as just being a child of God. It's just, again, it's going to come with the territory. The devil's not going to make it easy for any of us, and we should just kind of come to grips with that and take comfort in it, knowing that nothing happens to us that he's not already prepared for. So let's find peace. Let's find comfort in that. And again, if you've noticed that it's hot and heavy and there's more than there usually seems to be, take a look around and say, what am I doing differently right now that's really kind of drawn fire? What's going on? Why am I now the focus of his attempt to upturn my work and keep me occupied with other things? What's going on that I should know about? Those are the kind of things you want to ask when it comes to, quote, spiritual warfare. But don't be surprised by it. And don't be taken off guard by it either. Be on the ready at all times. Because again, that warfare never ends. It is all day, every day. It never ends until the Lord returns for us. It will be here as long as we're believers, and as long as we're in this world, that's going to be going on. Again, embrace it, take it, and just recognize what it is, and realize that as you lean on Him for it and He brings you through it, you'll know what it looks like the next time that it comes around, and you'll know how to engage it. So, any questions on any of what I shared today? Contact me through the ministry's website, whether it's the trip to Israel, the stuff that we looked at in Matthew, the matter of spiritual warfare. Contact us through the ministry's website, oldpaththeology.net.